And now it's Deborah Kobylt Live.
Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me today on Deborah Kobylt Live. I'm your host, Deborah Zara Kobylt. My guest today is John Kobylt, host of the award-winning John Kobylt Show on KFI Radio and also as a podcast on the iHeartRadio podcast app. I'd like to welcome you, John, for joining us. And I have one thing to say. The world has gone bananas. We've absolutely gone bananas locally in our state here in California, nationally, internationally. And I like to say a lot of people are sitting by like potted plants and just watching it happen. What is going on? I like to start locally because that happens to be affecting us terribly. The crime seems to be up. I haven't looked at any stats, but it appears to be up. That is scary for me. I never feel safe anywhere that I go in Los Angeles. I could go behind a gate, and the minute I drive out of there, it's like, that's it. What's happening in LA in terms of the people who are homeless and or unhoused, crime, all of it, please.
Well, interesting you brought that up first, because I was reading and fuming about a story in the LA Times this morning. And the part that got me was the repeated claim that crime is actually very low right now. And they love to use a phrase called perception of crime. Okay. I once had the police chief on the show. And while I was telling him that the crime is bad, he was telling me, no, it's the perception of crime. It's people on social media too much. It's people watching the 10 o'clock news too much. And I said, no, it's really happening. And I'll tell you what the difference is. The things you and I classify as crime, they don't. And let's start with the homeless. Now, if you follow a vagrant around all day, he's committing a lot of crimes. He's peeing in the street. He's pooping in the street. He's stealing stuff. He's menacing people, threatening them. Probably commits 12, 15 crimes a day, including a couple of felonies. But since they're allowed to have free reign, none of them are reported as crimes. And mostly what it does is it gives us, you and I, a perception of crime. But officially, there's no crime registered. And that's the difference between what they say and what we see. And they use that because it justifies their inaction. If there's not really a crime surge, if it's just our perception, then we need to go home and have a drink and take a pill because we're overwrought and emotionally unstable because they have everything under control. And
go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say not all unhoused and homeless people are doing that, perhaps many of them, but not every single one of them. There are some who really need help. And for those, they need to get the help. That's the issue I have. I don't understand how we are allowing tens of thousands of people to just roam from neighborhood to neighborhood. Let's just talk about, for them, that's just not a good way to live. Now, perhaps I'm putting in my own thoughts and ideas on that with the word good, but it's not a very safe and healthy way to live. How about that?
You see what they've done? They've scrambled our brains where you have to give a little bit of a disclaimer. It's like, well, this is my judgment that it's not a good. Of course, it's not a good way. It's a horrific way. It's a deadly way to live. So here is the center problem of this issue. Our council person, I've talked with her. And she's done a really good job of cleaning up much of the district. But there are a fair number of crazy people around, and they're angry and menacing and unpredictable. And she says she's not allowed to get rid of them unless they agree to go. What's left is this hardcore, just in our district. Other districts, council people do nothing. In our districts, we have a hardcore of the worst because of the ideological beliefs of the mayor, Karen Bass, that she is not going to allow these people to get help unless they want it, unless they ask for it. And so now these are the worst people. These are the people with the most severe mental illness, the most severe addiction, the most dangerous, the most menacing. And they're the ones that Bass has decreed will not be removed from the street until they say so. And of course, they're never going to say so. Their brains are so scrambled by either their mental illness or their drugs or both that it's not going to happen. And this is an ideological belief. This is a religious belief they have, that these people are oppressed. We are the oppressors, and they are allowed to share the same space with us. They have every right to it as we do. We're not going to exert our privilege just because we're homeowners and taxpayers.
What about no trespassing? I mean, does that go for public sidewalks, streets, and the like?
Supreme Court last June said no one has a right to sleep in a public place. Street, sidewalk, park, you name it. No one has a right. Any city can remove them any way they wish. And many cities have done that. San Francisco is doing it aggressively. San Jose is doing it aggressively. Karen Bass refuses to. In fact, she criticized the decision. So this is what we're stuck with. We're only one of the only large cities out here in California that has not responded by cleaning up the streets. Gavin Newsom even threatened to cut funding if cities didn't do it. And Bass doesn't care. And of course, her funding wasn't cut anyway because he's a phony. But that's where we are.
Well, then how do we get out of this? I guess different representation, right?
Different mayor, different city council. Or maybe, since everyone's taking to the streets these days, maybe the normal people ought to take to the streets.
Well, there's my potted plant
yeah,
reference.
But they're not. You're right.
People are not doing it. And look, I've actually mentioned this before when we've actually done a show before, that we've been in community meetings and people were just sitting there when I stood up and called them all potted plants, and they looked at me like I was the problem. I said, okay, you just wait 1, 2, 5 years, then get back to me. And some of them did. And they said, oh my gosh, are we so sorry that we didn't speak out then? I said, well, then speak out now. Because if we don't, this is pretty serious. Look what's going on in some of the, there's some malls where people are now starting to, create disturbances and protests. I mean, I feel like anywhere I go in this city, it's just not that safe. Look what's happening in Santa Monica. Can you address that?
Oh, well, yes. And then I have a story that happened this morning in Santa Monica that I didn't get a chance to tell you. But in Santa Monica is the same issue. They have destroyed one of the most popular shopping districts there. The Promenade, 3rd Street Promenade. They have ruined your favorite shopping center, Santa Monica Place. And in San Francisco, in downtown, they had a huge shopping center, and 93% of the businesses are gone. And now Santa Monica and San Francisco are having a major financial crisis because they've lost all that tax money. The property in San Francisco used to be worth about $1.2 billion. It's now worth $200 million. So they're going to lose over 90%.
That's a lot, considering that's a lot. Go ahead.
Oh, they're going to lose over 90% of that tax revenue, and that's a big, big building. 93% of the businesses are gone in that shopping center. Santa Monica is filed like a precursor to bankruptcy the other day. Their tax revenue and their tourism revenue way down. So how many different ways can you lose tax revenue? Sales taxes? No one's selling. Stores are all shut down. Property tax revenues, hotel tax revenues, all the extra excise taxes they charge when you rent a car or rent a room, all that's gone. And they actually destroyed the golden goose in both cities because people loved from all over the world and all over the metro areas to go visit downtown San Francisco and Santa Monica. And now it's gone. And they're going, well, wait, we can't pay the bills. Oh, wow.
Why would anybody want to empty out the lovely 3rd Street Promenade, or at one time it was, and the mall there? I mean, it was a place to get your holiday gifts. It was a place to roam around with the kids on 3rd Street where they had fountains and the kids would get excited and you get some ice cream. I mean, is that so bad to live that way? Or they really want to take that away? Go ahead.
I don't know if they wanted to destroy it, although I'm more and more thinking that they did, based on what they've done to Santa Monica and what's happened to the Palisades, or their religious belief in the sanctity of the homeless guy, the vagrant, is so powerful that no, we are not going to take them off the street. They have a right to be there. We should learn to live with them. We shouldn't be so afraid. They're not that harmful. A lot of these people actually believe this. And, I'll start quoting statistics and what they do is they shame and they bully and they try to shut you up and they call you a bunch of names.
No, they don't believe it. Because if they did, their front door would be wide open and they'd be having a barbecue in the back for everybody to come on in. I don't see our mayor doing that or some of the local council people, or the people in Santa Monica, they're probably living behind a gate themselves. So they don't believe any of it. I don't believe it. It is some kind of odd thing that's going on. I just don't know why it's not reversing, because this isn't working. As you said, money does talk. And at the end of the day, they're not bringing in any money. And then what happens when they declare bankruptcy? What actually happens? They go to the state saying that they need money. And next, I want to get on to a few things that's happening in the state.
Yeah, maybe they do that. But let me tell you this quick story about what happened to me this morning. So I went on my usual bagel run, and I came to an intersection, and at the stop sign, I'm facing a house, residential house. Down the block is a commercial district. And I see a homeless guy sitting on the wall across the street. Big house, nice place. And he's got a tremendous amount of possessions, shopping cart, bags, all stacked up everywhere. And he's acting crazy. And he's talking to himself, and he's gesturing and waving his arms. So I called 911 right away, because kids walk to school there, right? And if you're walking from the north, you're not going to see him because he's partially hidden by a hedge. And then you'll step out in front of him, and it's going to be like that. And who knows what he's going to do? In my head, every moment is what happened to that poor woman in Charlotte, North Carolina, on the train, right? You don't know what these guys are going to do. So I call 911, and the operator says in this kind of voice, well, so what's the emergency? I explained, crazy person waving his arms, carrying on, sitting there, got all kinds of stuff. Well, what's bothering you? That he's on a piece of private property, or the way he's acting? I go, well, it's the way he's acting. Well, is he threatening? I go, well, yeah, if you saw him. Well, what's threatening about him? Well, he's talking to an imaginary person and waving around, and she and I could see they had been trained. They have a handbook on how to talk you out of it. And it's like, well, do you want a police officer there? Well, what do you think I called? Would you like us to follow up with a call? Yeah. Here's my name. Here's my number. Yeah, call me. And I called in at 7:15. At 9:38, they contacted me and said, well, we were just there, and that guy is gone. Well, of course he's gone. So I got interrogated. I was causing a problem.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And something, for anybody who thinks that, that they're either not on drugs or not mentally ill in some way, and that they could, in fact, harm people, you're wrong. Because that can happen. It makes me feel very unsafe and very scared. And you and I have recently spent time in other states on the East Coast, and I absolutely never feel that way in other places. I am aware that situations happen everywhere, but this is a whole different sense of bad stuff. It's very terrifying. I want to talk a little bit about what's happening in our state. Proposition 50 to redraw district lines, gas prices that still absolutely, people, you better listen to me. They could shoot up to $8 a gallon starting next year. John, talk about either one, whichever you want. I'd also like to very quickly touch upon this train that they continue to want to build that starts from nowhere and goes nowhere. And people, that's your money that you work for, and it's going towards something you'll never use. In fact, it's going into somebody's pocket. So those are three areas. You can take on either one first.
Start with the $8 gas.
Okay.
It's not hyperbole. That's a real possibility. 2 oil refineries are closing in California in a few months by springtime. One of them is in Carson, and one of them is in Benicia, up in Northern California. They close, we're down to 6. We used to have over 40. Even 25 years ago, we had 25. Now we have 6. And here are the reasons. First of all, the supply of oil is going to be cut dramatically. It's about a 20% loss, right? So supply and demand, less supply, price goes up. Secondly, there's so little oil being produced in California that the big pipeline they use to transport it is going to run dry. You need a certain amount of oil. It's like, a fire hydrant, right? If there's not enough water, there's no water pressure, and the water just dribbles out. Well, it's the same thing with this oil pipeline. If there's not enough oil, the pressure's too low, and then everything doesn't function. And so they're going to lose the refineries. the oil pipeline is literally drying up. Newsom, after many years of denouncing and cursing at the oil companies, finally realizes, like, holy crap, I've really screwed things up. So he tried to find a buyer somewhere around the world, any international buyer, to take over the Valero refinery in Benicia. Couldn't find anybody.
Oh, wow.
Not one energy company in the whole world would touch it. So now he's talking about giving Valero $200 million of our tax money to keep the place opened and maintained. So now, after raising the taxes and regulations so high that we already have $5 gas, he's taking some of that money and giving it to Valero to try to keep us from having $8 gas. I mean, it's mind-boggling.
And I don't know how that's going to work. I actually don't even see how that's going to work.
It's not going to work. But what he must do to lower prices is get rid of the excessive taxes and get rid of the excessive regulation. But they're taking some of that money and they're using it on high-speed rail. Okay, to segue into another interest you have. Well, high-speed rail has now been guaranteed $1 billion in tax money for the next 20 years.
Oh my gosh.
They are going to keep stealing the money and not building a railroad and pretty much telling the public, yeah, you don't like it, go screw yourselves. And they have super majorities. They're in complete control of the governor's house. They have complete control of the assembly, the state senate. The Republicans or anybody else has next to no influence, which takes us to the third topic that you wrote, Prop 50. Prop 50 will create this situation among our congressional delegation. Right now, we have an independent commission that draws the lines, and we're still, the Republicans are outnumbered by, what is it? It's 43-9. They're going to redraw the lines if this proposition passes in November, and the Democrats will have a 48-4 advantage. 48-4. There'll be only 4 Democratic Republican congressmen coming from California, even though over 40% of the states vote for Republican congressional candidates. So these people vote for 42% of the time for Republicans. They're going to get 4. And the Democrats are going to have 48. And another huge imbalance.
Do people in this state not realize that we are paying 13% state income tax right out of your paycheck? Of course, federal income tax. And you really don't see much for it. What I want to say to people is, what are you seeing with that 13%? Like, are you getting a better road? Do you feel safer? Nothing. This train, by the way, where does it go now? It starts where and goes where?
If they actually built it, the plan is to go from Merced to Bakersfield.
Okay. Tell me how many people are going to drive to Merced to take a train to Bakersfield. I have a great idea what they could do with it and who they could put on it, but I'm not going to say it because I'm going to get cheap for it. Well, but if you know what I mean. But go ahead, please.
Well, and it's not even those 2 cities, which are at least small, recognizable cities. It's actually going to be 2 small towns, Madera to Shafter. That's where the train's going to go. You get out of the train in Shafter, you got to figure out your way to Bakersfield after you get off. Same thing when you get off in Madera. Now, with this new money, they're thinking, all right, how about if we build it from Gilroy in Northern California, where the Garlic Festival is, to Palmdale, where there's nothing. And it's like Gilroy to Palmdale is the new idea. Nothing to San Francisco, nothing to LA, Anaheim, San Diego, Sacramento, which was the original plan. Those 5 cities were going to be linked.
Do people realize that's $1 billion a year being spent with nothing done? That means that $1 billion is going somewhere and nobody can even track where the money is. I just don't know how people can put up with this.
It's being stolen.
Obviously.
Yeah, and it's just like the homeless money in LA is being stolen. There's $2 billion missing.
Well, may I go back to my potted plant theory? Everyone is sitting home like a potted plant and not asking these big questions. That is the money coming out of your paycheck. It bothers me deeply. I come from a dad who had 3 jobs, and my mom, cleaned houses and was a waitress for a living. It bothers me deeply that they could just waste our money like this. It terribly. So I don't care what it is you do in your life. Part of what you make is going to fund nothing, or it's going into somebody's pocket. So please stop being a potted plant and do something. I would say call your local representative, but most of them are in on it too. I really don't know what to do. If you're going to take to the streets, at least take to the streets with this one, because it benefits all of us, right?
I think a lot of people don't know what's going on because there's much media coverage of it. And a lot of times it's very biased and slanted. And I think people are way, way too distracted scrolling on their phone, look at social media feeds and texting. And so I think I've always said that the biggest enemy is not the other political party, it's apathy. And we are drowning in apathy and ignorance.
What's happened nationally now, sadly, based on what happened last week in Utah, there's more divisiveness than ever. What can be done about it? It's almost like a cancer that's in our society, but it's not just here in the U.S. It's everywhere. We have friends who
have social media everywhere.
Wait, say that again.
Sorry about that.
Go ahead. Say it again.
They have social media everywhere. Social media, in the words of the Utah governor, is the brain cancer, and it's metastasizing in millions, hundreds of millions of brains, young brains. Average teenager here in America is staring at their screen on social media about 7 hours a day. You imagine that?
Are you kidding? 7 hours? That's a lot.
No, I'm serious. So what do you think happens after about 5 years, 7 hours a day, more on the weekends, and you've seen the garbage and nonsense and filth, all kinds of crazy politics, crazy conspiracy theories. The guys are watching a lot of porn. So that's why dating is not happening much anymore. The girls are immersed with these influencers, and they end up with eating disorders, and they have new neuroses about how they look. So they're both sexes are getting affected in different ways, and they're not making friendships. They're not making romantic partnerships. They're not going on dates. They're not, on the upside, not doing as many drugs as they used to, or drinking, or having sex, but they're sitting in their rooms and looking at the little light on the screen, and that's life. And so, no, not surprised Tyler Robinson came out of that.
Yeah, but where do we go from here? Because social media is not going anywhere. It's up to us. It's up to everybody to sort of control it. But how do you do that? Because young people really want to feel like they belong somewhere, that they have a group. I personally feel like a lot of people have just sort of gone away a little bit from whatever values they hopefully are being taught at home. Maybe some people aren't. Maybe parents are ignoring kids. I don't know.
They are.
But any kind of spiritual guidance whatsoever. I'm not preaching, run back to religion, but I don't know. That's not so bad, is it? Somehow morally, I feel like we're bankrupt. How can we get somehow back to the center? How can we do a little bit of that?
You have to have an enormous number of parents, by the tens of millions, decide that they are not going to give a phone to a child until he's a teenager, and that phone use is going to be severely restricted or it's taken away. And nobody wants that fight, and nobody wants to impose that discipline. This generation of parents are just tragically lazy and disinterested. Many of them are on the phones themselves, scrolling away. And they usually say, well, like, everybody's on the phone, and not everybody is an assassin. It's like, okay. It's horrible parenting, total abdication of child raising in this country.
Yeah, but you also have to blame, I don't really like to blame any one thing, but what's happening in a lot of schools, and it starts in elementary school. You and I know that. I have some people who are educators in elementary schools, and, some of what they're talking about in their assemblies really shocked me. Really shocked me.
Sure,
and then, of course, Wait, and then middle school and high school. By the way, I cut these up into little promos when we're done. So please stop stepping on me. Anyway, go ahead. This is how we really are at home. I have to keep telling them what to do. Anyway, go ahead, please.
What was the question? Oh,
thanks. That it's happening in our schools, and it starts as early as elementary school, middle, and high school, not just on college campuses. What do we do? Like, how do we get some kind of sensible dialogue and real education, just real education, math, history, whatever, reading? How do we get that back so that or how to build a business, how to start something, how to grow a garden, as opposed to a lot of this ideology that seems to be taking place with assemblies in school? That pisses me off. Anyway, could you answer to that?
The teachers and the administrators believe in those assemblies. That's what they're interested in. The way you teach reading is you get up in the morning and you teach reading. They have the books. They know how to do it. They don't do it. Instead, they get up in the morning and they teach assemblies about sexualities to kids whose brains can't handle that information. If you're teaching elementary school students that, you're 9 years old, hey, how do you know you're not a girl? How do you know you're not a boy? You're doing that? That's criminal. I'm sorry, that's criminal. That would never be tolerated in any other age and in any other nation. But America in 2025, it's crazy. It's sick. It's wrong. And you've got to get your kids out of those classes. There is a day for that, maybe, but not in a classroom of elementary school kids ever. It's just wrong. So spend your day. Look, in California, 3/4 of the kids cannot read at a proficient level. They can't do math at a proficient level. They can't do science at a proficient level. 75%. This is total, absolute failure. And the kids, up until this year, had spent the last 12 years scrolling social media and texting in class. Imagine the last 10 years it didn't exist. Well, it would be a dramatically different world. But the last 10 years, there was no social media influence on people's lives.
Well, thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. John, if you want to give a shout out to your show and what you're going to be talking about today as well.
Probably a lot on this. You got me all wound up. But KFI AM 640, online, iHeartRadio app. You can stream it. You can hear the podcast on the iHeartRadio app. And that covers it.
All right. Thank you very much for joining us. John Kobylt Show, the #1 rated show, one of the top podcasts in the country, and also one of the top #1 rated shows here in California. Thank you very much for joining us. I appreciate the time and I appreciate the dialogue. And everybody, you can find my show, Deborah Kobylt Live, on YouTube and all social media platforms with video and audio. Please invite your friends also to listen and to watch. And I encourage you to have strong conversations that are at least peaceful in your own homes and communities, because we've got to do that, right? We're sort of failing in many ways as a society. We've got to bring that back. And I do have faith that we can. So thank you very much for joining us. My name is Deborah Zara Kobylt, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.